Ms. Byram, may I have roll call, please?
Mrs. Anderson,
Here.
Mrs. Dawson,
Here.
Miss Harrington,
Here.
Mrs. Quintern,
Here.
Mr. Rickett.
Here.
Madam Chair, the clerk certifies the presence of a quorum.
All right. Please stand. The Orange County JROTC will present colors and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
right shoulder, arms, left, face, forward, march.
Thank you all. You may be seated. Is there any adjustments to the agenda?
No, ma'am.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
I'll second.
All those in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
All right, moving on. Dr. Hornick.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Two quick recognitions this evening. I'll start with Mr. Hill. Technology, Greg.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Hornick. Before I do my presentations, I just want to start with a couple of short but very large statistics. Within the district, there are approximately 14,800 devices, 5,881 Chromebooks, 1,100 iPads, 465 MacBooks, 405 classroom displays on carts with another device attached to them, 38 servers, there are 35 virtual ones, 3 physical, 150 printers plus, over 700 desk phones, and 130 network switches, and over 550 wireless access points, as well as various and sundry special needs devices as well. And all of that technology and electronics is supported and maintained and kept functional 90+% of the time, and I'll even go as far as 95+% of the time, and I have statistics to back that up, by this amazing team. If you would all stand. I know you're all thinking, well, some of them aren't here. Well, one is not here. So these are the 5 individuals that support all of what I just read on the day-to-day and weekends when things happen as well. So I'm here to recognize 2 of our members who have not come before you before to be recognized. One is homesick, so we do have 5, but they're just an outstanding team, and my hat's off to them. I couldn't ask for a better group of people. So Daniel and Pam, if you'd come on up. So this is Daniel Lauber, and I'm recognizing him this evening not only for just his day-to-day, but also his support of students and staff at Locust Grove Primary, Locust Grove Elementary, and Locust Grove Middle. That's his main focus, are those 3 schools out on that end. And luckily he drives in from that end, so it's very easy for him to stop by and address issues when they arise, as he did just the other day. He's further commended for his work on creating and managing the AeroCorps after-school drone camp, and that was in partnership with the Boys and Girls Club and the Smart Community STEM camp. And he really spearheaded that and built that program from nothing. So, Daniel, congratulations. And I'm very pleased to have Pam Warren Washington with us. She had was actually on our payroll with ESSER funds, and thank you for approving her as an addition to our team as a full-time employee of the county, because we just couldn't do it without her. She is recognized for outstanding support of the students and staff at Orange County High School, which is where she is based primarily, but also works at Unionville and Lightfoot Elementary Schools. And she is further commended for working with Orange County High School students to provide technology and career internship opportunities. So she takes on and helps supervise students who are looking for a career in IT and are looking for some experiences in that. And those students help us, but she certainly helps them and forms those relationships that are so important for our students. So,
Thank you.
Renee, before you start, I just want to thank Greg and his team. Terrific job. You know, it's one of those things that you kind of go a little unnoticed until something breaks or something doesn't work, and then all of a sudden you're someone's best friend, or, hey, please help me. So thanks, you know, I thought there was more than 5. I really did. So thanks for everything you guys do. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Good evening. I'm very honored to be here this evening to recognize 2 individuals who worked tirelessly, I should say, on the first ever 6th grade career fair that we put together this year and provided for our students. These 2 ladies, when I say they worked a lot of hours, they worked a lot of hours on this, from everything from contacting community members and businesses and industry in not only Orange County but in surrounding counties to come, putting together the tent that housed some of it, and putting together a local person to do our food. And then, of course, the rain hit. And I felt so bad for them, but they never lost their excitement to do this. And when I say it rained that day, I know, Chelsea, you were there. It rained that day. But I'll be honest, it did not dampen the spirits of the vendors. The people from the community came, and they had such wonderful things to say about our students. They said that they were engaged in all the activities that the students went around to the tables, and they said they asked just really, really great questions. So that was a good experience for the students. And they also commended the setup and the organization of the entire event, which was totally these 2 ladies. So we did do some surveys afterwards. We surveyed our businesses, our teachers, and our students. We're still getting those in, but right now we have 101 students who've answered our survey, which is pretty good for 6th graders, and 41 of those students said they liked everything about the day, loved it. 58 said they liked a few things about it. Still, that's really good for 6th graders, right? And only 2 said they did not like it, and then out from that they put rain. So I'm tossing those out, right? So again, I just really want to thank their dedication, their professionalism, and I would also like to say that they've already sent thank you notes to all of the vendors. They've just really, from beginning to end, planned this out meticulously and has done just a great job. So Ellen, thank you for all that you did. And Jessica Sarver, thank you.
taking them all wrong then, I'm sorry. All right, 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board, and congratulations to our recipients this evening.
Thank you. We only have one major announcement this week. The Fall Choral Concert is October 10th at 7 p.m. at the OCHS Auditorium. So again, teachers, principals, if there's things you would like us to recognize, please feel free to send us an email or contact Laura, and she'll give me the list of things that I can present and make the community aware of. But thank you. All right. Now we'll go on to public comment. I'd like to open it for public comment. Ms. Byram, do we have anybody that signs up?
Yes, ma'am. We have 5 speakers signed up tonight. The first 2 speakers are Talina King and Alyssa Waller.
I would like to start out with the Orange County School Board recognizes the importance of maintaining a respectful and orderly environment during school board meetings. Therefore, we kindly request that all comments made are relevant to the field of pre-K through 12 public education and pertain to the matters concerning the school board and division. We ask that individuals refrain from using offensive language, engaging in vulgar or profane behavior, or making comments or taking actions that might incite violence or disrupt the peace. Unless otherwise authorized by the chair, each speaker is allotted a maximum of 3 minutes to express their views. To uphold decorum, we also kindly request that applause, noise-making, or other disruptive behaviors be avoided before, during, and after a member of the public addresses the board. It is important to note that the public comment is intended for addressing the school board, and therefore comments should be directed solely towards the board members. Furthermore, it is expected that the board members will refrain from engaging in dialogue with the speakers during this time, as it is an opportunity for the board to actively listen to the thoughts, concerns, and feedback of the public. Any conduct that violates the established decorum and order as determined by the chair or their designee may result in disciplinary actions, including potential expulsion from the meeting. Alternatively, written comments may be submitted to the board members via email. It is crucial to emphasize that these guidelines are not intended to restrict freedom of speech, but rather to ensure effective communication between the public and their public servants. We eagerly anticipate your valuable contributions and feedback. Thank you.
Ms. King, if you'd like to come forward.
First, I want to say thank you for having me here tonight. So what is school for? What's the purpose? It's to educate, right? And for meaningful education, the lessons that are taught must be rooted in the truth. Much of our society today plays with ideas that contradict the truth that people have known throughout the ages and truth that can be observed. A popular example of this is gender identity, where a person can identify as someone they are not. Someone born a female, such as myself, can at any point decide they want to be a man. But no matter how many times I say I'm a man or I feel like a man, it's simply not true. So how do we address this in our schools? We don't want to focus on a subject that takes away from our children's education for a subject that does not enhance their learning. Additionally, since legally no one can be compelled to use preferred pronouns, it also makes sense that we would not allow a female in the boys' bathroom or vice versa. Just as no one would be comfortable with a grown man off the street coming into one of our schools and just walking into the girls' bathroom, why would that be okay for a student at any grade level? Students at our high school that change their minds about their gender identity on a whim are walking into whichever bathroom they feel like. As a parent of multiple students in the school system, that's concerning. When a teenage girl enters the boys' bathroom, she could potentially be sexually assaulted or even beat up. And who would be there to protect her and prevent her from that happening? Some people might say she opened herself up to that by walking into that bathroom. that she took that on knowingly. But that's what adults who know better are here for. It is our job to tell her no. We're not going to allow you to put yourself in a dangerous situation like that. There's good reason that bathrooms have always been separated by male and female distinction. We have differences, and that matters. Let's encourage these kids to be who they were born to be. Let's cultivate confidence in them and who they are, and keep the focus of our schools on learning. I encourage you to consider the need for policies to be put in place to protect the children that we love and want to see thrive. Thank you.
Ms. Waller? Okay. We'll move on to the next two. It's Nicole Pappas and Megan Donnelly.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. You have a lot of policies on your plate tonight, and many of them have been sitting there for some of them up to 5 months. I want to address something I think is more of a practice than a policy, and that is having public comments only during regular meetings and not at workshops. In fact, frankly, I don't really understand the difference between a workshop and a regular meeting. I had kind of understood that a workshop was for discussion, kind of to talk about things, decide what would come forward for a regular meeting. But then I've seen action items taken during a workshop on a discussion item. So I'm really confused about the difference between a workshop and a regular meeting. The last meeting, however, you broke with protocol. You broke with that practice by allowing somebody to make a public comment during a workshop. And that was a good thing, because that individual had comments that were relevant, that mattered at that time. And to allow him the opportunity to speak was a positive thing, even though you broke with policy or practice. I'm not sure if it's a practice or a policy to not allow public comment during workshops, but it was a good thing because you were able to hear from the public at a time when it was important to say those words. So it brought to mind the thought that maybe the public should have the opportunity to speak to you more than 12 times a year. How many people in the audience, raise your hand if you would like to have the opportunity to speak more than 12 times a year at a workshop, as well as at a regular meeting? It would also mean that you have the opportunity to hear from the public more frequently. And I know that this board truly wants to hear from the public. You've said so many times in so many different ways that you want to know what the public is thinking. So it seems to me that maybe rethinking that practice would be a good thing. The other thing is that public comment is on the record, and that is stated, it's a little hard to read because it says, it's policy BDDH. It says all activities, including public comment, are live streamed and recorded and will remain as public record. But as you mentioned earlier, Ms. Anderson, we can submit written comments, but our written comments do not become part of the meeting public record. So the emails that I sent you about the policies coming up tonight is not going to be in the public record. And I'm not going to have the opportunity because I don't have a chance to come back again tonight to speak to those things. So I'd just like you to think about having public comment more frequently. Thank you.
Ms. Donnelly?
Good evening. Thank you for listening. My name's Meg Donnelly. I'm here to address I'm going to address two policies that have been proposed, the IGAE/IGAF, in which parents would have to, I believe it's far better for parents to have to opt out of the health class for their children than to have to opt in. I think that health class is a part of the curriculum and should be the accepted norm, and we already have it in place that people can opt out. I would like to say that I think it's very problematic to think about, and I strongly oppose requiring parental permission for students to attend and speak at school board meetings. A previous speaker tonight said, what is education about? And I think that we're trying to teach students to be critical thinkers, and we're trying to get them involved in their education in as many ways as we possibly can, and encouraging them to see the process, the care, the concern that goes into making policies and decisions, to giving them a voice in that process, even if it's not a vote, a voice, and to teaching them that their voice matters is really critical. And I would hate to see anything that stands in the way of students being encouraged to be here. The third one is the one about the superintendent being restricted from purchasing things above $30,000. I think it's DJR. I'm sorry, my notes are scribbled, but respectfully, I've worked in schools for 40 years. Superintendents have a heck of a job. Anything that makes their job, that restricts their work, I think is problematic. I think that there are checks and balances in place, and I hope we use them, and I hope that we trust the people that we put into these positions. And so anything that makes it more difficult for Dr. Hornick to do his job, I think is a problem. I'd also like to address the issue of process. I think that in order for the school board to be an effective, well-run organization, there need to be policies and processes. And I think that they need to be more than just articulated. I think they need to be followed. And I think that my time is up.
Miss Sarah Yeager.
I speak tonight to reiterate that I do not approve of these proposed policy changes, IGAE/IGAF. By making health class opt-in only, you will deprive children of data-driven mental and physical health education. If a child doesn't receive health class, you will have many unhappy parents, especially if the child doesn't have sufficient credits to graduate without the class. There already is a policy in place allowing parents to opt out of health class. Draft of DJ/R, this micromanagement of the superintendent will waste time and negatively affect his job efficiency. If it is already within the budget, he needs to make executive decisions in the moment rather than coming to every board meeting asking for mundane budget approvals. Office supplies alone for schools could easily surpass $30,000. There's sufficient financial transparency of the school system already in place. It's available online for those willing to do the work to find it. I believe the policy should remain as written. Policy BDDH, I oppose requiring parental permission slips for students to attend or speak at school board meetings. This infringes on First Amendment rights and may prevent students from attending meetings where they might receive an award or recognition. I also request the board take a vote of no confidence for Melissa Anderson as chair. At the last meeting, she allowed selective enforcement of public comment rules, which she voted to amend. Other individuals at the meeting who wanted to speak on the same topic were essentially censored because they followed policy. Melissa did not do her job of educating that constituent on the rules of public comment. She broke policy by directly engaging in conversation with him. The policy currently states, the school board will not respond to public comment at the time it is presented. Should the chair or a majority of the board decide that a response to any public comment is in order, the chair or majority of the board shall so direct the administration to provide such a response. I thank Superintendent Hornick for stepping in and doing that at the last meeting. During Melissa's tenure, she has not shown active participation in agenda items or board discussion. There's been more focus on divisive policies, discord among board members, and second-guessing agenda items after they've already been voted on. Under Melissa's leadership, there has been little tangible action to benefit the schools, but significant wasting of time. Jack Rickett has much more experience managing people. He's knowledgeable of Robert's Rules of Order from his service on other local boards. He is tactful, effective with negotiation. He is a truly nonpartisan member of this board. He will much more efficiently run the school board meetings so that you can focus on the business of truly attending to educational, student, staff, and capital improvement needs. I will continue holding this board accountable for policy proposals that disregard legal counsel's recommendation and only serve to promote Ms. Quintern's obviously political machinations, which impede this board's ability to function in a positive service of our public school system.
Ms. Byram?
There are no additional speakers.
All right. I will close public comment. Moving on, the consent agenda. Minutes, financial reports, and monthly operating bills.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the minutes from April 29th, 2024, May 6, 2024 meetings, the September 2024 financial report, and the monthly school nutrition fund report, as well as the September operating bills report as presented.
All those in favor by saying aye.
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 Thank you. All right. Moving on, action items.
Madam Chair, I did want to propose a substitute motion, if I may.
Yes, absolutely.
So under policy BDDH, I provided Ms. Byram, as well as the remainder of this board, alternative language for this policy, which would rework the entirety of the first paragraph. I'm not sure if we can get that up. So essentially it reads, members of the community are invited and encouraged to attend meetings of the Orange County School Board to observe its deliberations. Any member of the community may address the school board, including minors, after written parental notification on matters related to the Orange County Public Schools at any regular meeting as provided in the accompanying regulation. Persons wishing to address the school board are requested to contact the superintendent, the school board, chair, or their designee for placement on the agenda. To ensure your voice is heard, please submit public comment requests to the school board clerk. All activities, including public comment, are live streamed and recorded and will remain as public record. So I would like to propose that amendment to policy BDDH in collaboration with the remaining policies for approval this evening, Madam Chair.
All right. I think we can go through each individual one.
Yes, please.
And approve as we step down through them.
Madam Chair, can we vote on the amendment?
Adding
so
it.
that we could look at the whole policy in its entirety with the amendment. Not to approve that policy, but to approve the language to discuss tonight.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, may I ask her a question?
Absolutely.
Are you able to change the color? I can't even see the light green on the changes that you're proposing at all.
It is a Word document.
It is difficult to see.
Yeah.
I just wanted to show distinctly where my changes were.
While we're changing that, Dr. Hornick, would you chime into the feasibility of including minors after written parental notification? What does that look like from your position?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think Chelsea's going to have it done in like 2 seconds.
I'm trying.
Doesn't want to cooperate with you.
Let me see if I can airdrop it over, because I got it over here.
Okay.
See, Greg, we're yelling for you already.
Where's that tech team?
So while Ms. Byram, what Ms. Byram's doing is she's going to log into her portion of Final Site. And she has been, so I'm going to broaden the scope a little bit. Okay. And so she is going to log into Final Site, and she has been working on a dedicated web page that pretty much organizes the required notifications, various points where you can have opt-outs. It includes our acceptable use agreement, and a number of other really important pieces of information. These are currently sent at the beginning of each year. And we were looking to have a very easily accessible one-stop shop for community members to be able to access opt-out, opt-in, basically all the information that folks would need to know. And so of course, there's a dichotomy with the current issue with respect to BDDH and balancing the concerns that I've heard with balancing First Amendment rights with parental notification. Okay, so what we, and again, this is in draft form for the board to consider. A possible way that we could go is to address student participation during school board public comment, similar to how we handle library notification, where essentially a parent could ask that they be notified if their student signs up to speak. And it would be a pretty simple form.
Sorry, I think this, because I'm not signed into this computer, this is as much as it's.
That's okay. Essentially, email your name and your student's name. And if a student signs up and his or her parent or guardian has asked to be notified, we could send them an email letting them know in writing that your son or daughter has asked to sign up to speak at public comment. And then from there, the families decide what's going to happen from there. I think it's important for us to not be the ones to have to try to police this, so to speak. There's many other things that we need to spend our time doing. I do not view this as if we would send an email. I mean, if we don't hear back, we're moving forward. And so this is a potential way to thread the needle on the question at hand. And so again, this is in a draft, not out for public consumption until now, of course, for you all to see, but we would make this page live. Laura is almost done with it. And whether or not we include the form that we just showed you would ultimately hinge on how the board decides to vote on BDDH. Either way, this page is going to go live because this is a really, really good web page for the community. When you're talking about increasing access and knowledge, this is another way for our folks to be able to consume a lot of information, and Laura has included policy and everything else in here. And so this is a very, very robust web page. And so if whatever the board ultimately decides, that could be a potential way to address BDDH in this fashion. And so I submit that to you for your consideration. Again, we will make this live once Laura was done with everything, and whether or not the student participation part is on here or not ultimately is how you all decide to handle BDDH.
I appreciate that, thinking outside the box. I think we are kind of on the same train of thought here with my amendment to the policy. However, I would personally prefer it, if we pass the policy, to be an opt-out versus an opt-in. We don't have that many students that do sign up for public comment participation, and so it's going to be more effective, I think, for transparency purposes, to have the opt-out of notification. And again, it's to highlight, this isn't for permission that I'm proposing this evening. It's for simple notification.
I think we need to, so Ms. Quintern's asking to add this to the discussion part of our policies. So if I could have a second to add her amendment to the policy for discussion.
I would second that for discussion.
All those in favor by saying aye?
For discussion.
For discussion.
For discussion.
Aye.
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 Thank you. All right. So we will start at the beginning. AC.
Okay, so with that, so Ms. Byram, if you could go back and we'll go through, and then when we get to BDDH.
Yes, then we'll go through
Understood.
that. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think some of these are a lot simpler, and we can move forward much quicker with those than some of the others.
Madam Chair, to put this on the table, I would move to approve policy AC as currently presented.
May I have a second?
I would second.
Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair, I would like to make a comment.
Okay.
I do have concerns regarding the last sentence within this current policy AC that is being added. This could potentially be interpreted that separation by sex would be allowed. Does this language provide a mechanism to implement barriers to participation in the future based on this limited and implied interpretation of sex? I feel this could be a slippery slope and pose legal challenges such as discrimination. Based on these concerns and the superintendent's communication that this sentence is superfluous, I would request legal counsel opinion on this amendment before bringing it to a vote.
I thought we got, did we get legal?
Not on that specific issue, I don't believe. Not on the term, the word, the meaning, the multiple meanings of sex.
What I sent to you all is a very good summary of what board counsel said about this particular, I guess, in particular, the last sentence is what's in question.
Madam Chair, if I could just comment.
Dawson.
I'm not sure why what's already written in Article 1, Section 1 of the Virginia Bill of Rights is up for discussion. It's the Virginia Bill of Rights, and therefore should stand without question. That's my opinion.
Anyone else?
I'm of the same line of thinking as Ms. Dawson. Again, it's in the Bill of Rights, and so I think a vote against this would be a vote against the Virginia Bill of Rights, and I don't think that there's really any room for misinterpretation. Regulation, again, is going to be up to the school superintendent and his designees, but I do believe that this is an important part of the policy.
Mr. Rickett, do you have anything?
I mean, I would think that I don't disagree with Ms. Dawson or Ms. Quintern, but the part that makes me scratch my head, it's the Virginia Bill of Rights, so we just need to rewrite it and put it in policy because we can't enforce. I'm a little confused at why we feel the need to rewrite a policy that already stands.
Well, again, I don't see any issue with it because it is already in the Bill of Rights. Putting it in a policy and reiterating it, my personal opinion, I don't think that hurts us in any way. You know, it's specified here. Obviously, it's referenced somewhere else in the Bill of Rights, so I have no problem leaving it.
Madam Chair, may I?
You can readdress the board, yes.
Thank you. I would just say again, based on a letter that we've received from a constituent subsequent to this being brought forward to our counsel, our legal counsel, that I still have the concern regarding sex. We were advised there were many definitions, let's say, and so I do have a concern about that relative to it already being in the Virginia code. Again, I think that this policy amendment process is not necessary because it already is code. Bill of Rights, we do follow that, and this is just a waste of time.
Madam Chair, if I may respond. I believe I did receive that constituent email as well, and I believe things that would differ with regard to mere biological sex, I believe that could fall under an IEP if there were examples of students that have a biological sex that might differ based on chromosomal abnormalities. So again, we are emphasizing that the Orange County School Board explicitly prohibits discrimination. So I believe my language takes it a step further. We're not just committed to non-discrimination. We explicitly prohibit discrimination. And with it being part of the Bill of Rights, Madam Chair, I would ask that we call the question.
All right. All those in favor by the proposed additions to policy AC, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay? Or say nay, sorry.
Nay.
AG.
So policy passes with a 4-1. Did I get that right? Yeah. All right, moving on. AG, the literacy plan.
I would move that we approve AG as written.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor by approving the new wording for policy AG, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Now we're on to policy BDDH and the amended additions to BDDH.
Madam Chair, to clarify, the addition that I provided this evening is only to change the first paragraph. Everything else on the policy would remain the same as presented here.
May I have a motion?
I move to approve BDDH as amended.
You have a second? Second with discussion.
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor of?
Can we have discussion, please? Is that what, I'm sorry, is that what you were going to say?
That's what I was
I'm
going to say,
sorry.
but that's okay. No, you're fine. Discussion opened. All right. Ms. Harrington, would you like to go first?
Thank you. Policy BDDH as a really amended conflicted with Virginia code. There is no requirement for parental permission to speak in code. It potentially is a violation of a student's First Amendment rights. So I do appreciate the
Point of
change in language.
clarification.
Excuse me?
I just wanted to offer a point of clarification. This is not for parental permission, it's
I'm
parental
still
notification.
going to address that.
I just wanted to make
Thank
sure.
you. Yeah.
Sure.
So I appreciate the change that Chelsea, Ms. Quintern, has proposed in the language, and in theory support these amendments. However, I'm a little concerned that since this is based on such a fundamental rights issue, that I am a little concerned about the difference from the word permission to notification. Based on legal opinion, I would consider supporting this change, but I'm not willing to put division at legal risks of challenge or cost due to the First Amendment issues that I'm concerned of. I would also request that further clarification and documentation on how notification would occur and what happens if it does not. I know that Dr. Hornick just gave that to us a few minutes ago, so thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Sure.
And again, I'm willing to support these proposed changes if legal opinion does support the change and if the superintendent's clarification was received, which it was. So that's my position at this moment.
Madam Chair, may I respond?
Yes.
So, Ms. Harrington, I do not believe this would be a First Amendment issue, as we would not be restricting students from speaking. We simply would be offering notification to their parents saying, hey, your student has signed up to speak at this evening's board meeting. And then whatever statement either Dr. Hornick or this board comes up with, I think would have no ramifications legally or otherwise, as we wouldn't be preventing anyone from speaking during public comment. That being said, I would prefer that the option that Dr. Hornick provided be an opt-out. I think that it's imperative that we provide every tool necessary for parents to be involved in their student's life. And I think that it's important that they have the opportunity to have conversations with their children, especially with the fact that students are going to be, I mean, in general, everybody is going to be here. They're going to be publicly recorded. It's live streamed, and it's also a matter of public record moving forward. So that could potentially have future ramifications. So I think that it's important for parents to be able to emphasize that with their students. I think that concludes my comments on this issue for right now, Madam Chair.
Well, we just can't have it both ways. I'm as much for parents' rights as anyone, as you are. But I'm not doing the work for the parents. When the child is outside, you are responsible for your child. And that being said, I am willing to go so far as to say, just like we do, Dr. Hornick and Laura have done a fantastic job. Can you bring that back up? You know, this is a one-stop shop for parents. If you have questions about the school system and what the policies are, you go right to this page. If you have questions, you email us. We have people that will respond to you. I have 3 children. I'm not raising 5,000 children. You know, that's kind of what my point is a little bit. I have no problem. I balance it as you do. They are still minors. And as adults that sit on this board, we do need to have some protections in place. You know, to me, the alternative that Dr. Hornick and the administration has come up with, there's a place on this page that you will be able to say, I want to be notified if my child signs up to speak at a board meeting. You will have a place to do that. You have every right to do that as a parent, every right. But it is not my right to stop your child from speaking because they may or may not say something that might damage them in the future. That is that's for the parents to decide. That's where I am.
Again, we're not going to be stopping kids from speaking.
And again, you have written parental notification in the language.
Right. We will be providing notification saying your student signed up to speak at a public board meeting.
And
that's it.
There's and again, you said, Dr. Hornick, clarify, this is in what stage? What you're working on?
It's draft, but it's just
It's pretty close to being done. What we really just need to know what we're doing with student participation during school board public comment.
Okay, so are we not comfortable with them having something where a parent can say, I want to be notified?
So you have to add to it.
as a link.
Sure.
I
I
mean, we can
would
always add it.
prefer, and I believe we should maybe vote on these two items separately. But I would prefer to have it as an opt-out. Again, not many students come to these meetings anyways, so I don't see the issue in when we have 5 students showing up. Shoot, I'll send the email if we need to. But just sending a notification, hey, your child has signed up for public comment, and then leave it up to the parent to decide what they would like to do with that information.
Yeah, so the opt-out is the burden on 99.9% of the parents instead of the one, let's say there's 10 parents that don't want their kids to speak. There's 5,000 kids. So everybody else has to do the work? Clarify for me.
So I don't believe that any parent would have an issue with getting notified that their child's coming to speak at a public meeting. I mean, even the courts prevent recording of minors in whether they're a witness, whether they're a victim, or whether they are the one facing trial. So there are additional protections for minors that I believe we don't have here, and we don't have the capability to provide those. In addition, lost my train of thought.
Well, you referenced the courts. Those are legal issues, and the protection is based for minors in a legal situation. This is not a legal situation. This is a child wants to speak their mind.
Correct. It's public record, but at the same time, it's also codified that parents have the right to the upbringing and education of their children.
Don't disagree with that at all.
I think this covers both.
All right, I'm going to let Ms. Dawson speak, please.
Thank you.
Apologies.
I am completely in favor of students addressing the board. I don't want to restrict them. I'm in favor, as our speaker said earlier, of teaching them the great lessons of civics and engagement in their community and learning how an active and informed citizenry can affect change. But I also believe, as is already codified in law, that parents have the fundamental right to the care, upbringing, and education of their own children. And I do think when I first read this, it almost seems to me that there's a direct, almost contradiction between what the General Assembly passed in HB 253 and the code I just referenced. So I think there is a legal argument. The General Assembly was extremely divided. This bill did not pass easily, and it almost split down the middle, as many things do, as you know. But what I think we have found a great middle ground on is this notification language. Permission is one thing. I do think we would be setting ourselves up for legal problems if we were to say that, because the code specifically says that students must be allowed to sign up in accordance with the procedures that exist for anybody else. That's the way the code is worded. So I think this notification language helps help parents know what's happening, and then once they've been notified, your child has signed up to speak, then parents are going to parent, and it becomes a conversation in the family, whether or not mom and dad or grandma, whoever, guardians, whatever it is, they take it from there, and it's not on us anymore. So I'm in favor of I don't know about the opt-in, opt-out. I think that part of it we can hassle with a little bit, but that this notification is there, and when a student signs up, it goes to a parent, and the parent is notified. I think that's all that it's incumbent on us to do, and the rest of it is up to the family.
All right,
Madam Chair, one more question, please. Is it possible to defer approval of this until our next meeting, since I was not able to look or read the language that Ms. Quintern amended at the last moment? I really would like to at least read that. I mean, from what I'm hearing, I am in support of this. It sounds correct to me, as long as there's no concern regarding the difference between notification and permission. If we're going to go forward based on this as an opt-out policy being implemented with the opportunity for parents to go to this and fill out something to ensure that their student is not doing something that they don't want them to do. But I really do think that since we haven't reviewed the entire document and the amendments were made at the last moment, we should bring this back.
Madam Chair, could we have moved to table this and then call a recess to be able to review the language before we vote?
But I would
I'm
prefer,
ready to
I
vote.
would prefer not. I mean, in all due respect to Ms. Harrington and Ms. Grinter, we've touched on it a little bit. I voted for the first one. We're rewriting policies left and right. We've got a lot of other things that we need to be focused on. I would prefer that we, move forward, allow Dr. Hornick to do his job in the sense that he and Laura have come up with a terrific idea. And it seems to be a middle of the road win, where if you're a parent and you don't want your child to speak, go to the website, fill out the form, and your child's not speaking.
So,
Period.
Let me call the question, Madam Chair.
May I speak?
Sorry.
No. I think I agree. I like the new wording, and I think that these may be two separate entities, voting on the policy, number one, and then voting on how this is implemented into the system that Dr. Hornick and Laura have provided for us, whether that be opt-in, opt-out, whatever type of notification. It could be, we could word it similar to the library books. But I think as far as the policy itself, I'm fine with the way that it's worded with the parental notification. I think we're all missing the fact that, and I think somebody might have touched on it too, but we are live streamed. We here in Orange County have only been live streamed since 2022. So having parents understand that whatever their child says during this meeting, we cannot alter because it's public record. So they need to understand what the implicate, or whatever they going to say needs to be understood, that it's out there forever. And I know that we have no ability to censor them or anything like that of what they say. So even if they come up to speak, and they are allowed to speak, if they say something that we feel that they could hurt them in the future, we don't have the ability to take that back. So they need to understand what it is before they come up to speak. So having the parental notification, I think, is a great alternative. And I think the policy, the way that it's written, and I like the amendment that you added, Ms. Quintern, with the parental notification. So that's my comments. So.
If I could just add one last thing.
Absolutely.
Based off of what you just said, I think it would be a wonderful idea when you get to the point of building that page, that exactly what she said is on there. Parents, be aware that our meetings are live streamed, they go on the internet, they live forever, and that's part of what you're agreeing when you're being notified and saying, okay, it's important information for everyone to know.
Ms. Dawson, as part of the amendment to this policy, it also states all activities, including public comment, are live streamed and recorded and will remain as public record. Madam
That's
Chair,
in
I
the
call a
light green.
question.
Like,
It's
it's
a
hard
light
to
green, we
read.
can't read.
Sorry. I'll choose a different color next time.
Oh. Before you call the vote, Dr. Hornick, do you have?
Well, that's the beautiful thing about a compromise. Sometimes everybody loves it, and sometimes everybody hates it. So, I think this is. However, I think this is a very judicious and thoughtful middle ground. We will equip the parents who want the information with the information, and then it is ultimately, I think, Ms. Dawson, you said it eloquently, it is now the ball is in their court to decide what they are going to do.
Agreed.
Call the question, Madam Chair.
May I have a second? Now that we already have.
Can you restate
the?
I move to approve policy BDDH as amended.
Second.
All those in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right.
Thank you,
Policy-
board. This was one of the things on this agenda that I was most passionate about, so I appreciate the fact that we're giving parents tools about this. Should we, Madam Chair, address how we would like to move forward with the opt-in, opt-out portion as Dr. Hornick presented, or should we wait till the next meeting?
I would think we could present that at the next meeting. That way everybody would have time to review it before we bring it up for discussion.
And I would like to thank you for the compromise.
Right. Oops, sorry. Moving on to policy FECBB, accommodations for the disabled. Do I have a motion to approve?
I would like to make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Could we have some discussion first?
Absolutely. I'm so sorry.
Just
Yes,
one
sorry.
thing. The very last highlighted blue thing, Americans with Disabilities Act, I honestly think we probably should just go back to saying law, so that we're not restricted to just that one act, but all of law for whatever else may come down the pike. That would be my suggestion.
Agree.
So unstrike the law and take out the American disabilities.
Madam Chair, I move to approve as amended by Ms. Dawson.
Second.
All those in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right. Policy passes, all 5 votes. Moving back. Now we're on to IGAD, Career and Technical Education. May I have a motion?
I move to approve as presented.
I second that motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, policy passes. Health education and physical education, IGAE draft. I have a motion.
Move to approve as presented.
May I have a second?
The second would be for discussion, correct, Madam Chair?
Correct, second with discussion.
Did you just make a second, or are you asking?
I'm
for a second?
asking, I'm sorry.
Second for discussion.
All right. Opening it up for discussion. We'll start at that and we might as well.
Thank you.
that's what we've been doing.
Currently, Virginia has, well, I'm going to say this, but this really, in my opinion, applies to IGAE, IGAF, and IGAG, so I just want to state that out front without having to read it again. Currently, Virginia has mandatory participation requirements for health and physical education. The Virginia Board of Education is the legislative entity that establishes the baseline. If a student does not complete the instructional requirements as defined in code, it could potentially create severe problems for the student relative to meeting graduation requirements. Currently, there is language in code and policy which provides the mechanism to opt out. Changing this to an opt-in process may put a student's graduation at risk. And that one is specific to IGAE, I believe. Changing this to an opt-in requirement negatively impact teachers and set them up for failure. And finally, an opt-in process is administratively cumbersome and unmanageable with current staffing. I have not been provided information or rationale from other members on why these changes need to be put in place. Parents have a responsibility to monitor their children's education. The information, communication tools, and processes in place provide them sufficient resources to be informed and therefore responsible and accountable for their child. In my opinion, this action is the result of agenda items I do not support, Therefore, I would be voting no on both of these items, all 3. Thank you.
Ms. Dawson?
I think that opt-in is going to create a lot of administrative difficulties to put it mildly. Opting out is the best and most efficient method, but I do think, and what Dr. Hornick and Ms. Byram have already shown us tonight, addresses my comment that we need to do a better job of informing parents about the availability of opt-outs, what the process is, making sure they know about it, and then we need to follow through. When a parent opts out, we need to make sure that happens. I've heard feedback from a lot of the community about this, and from staff as well, from teachers that I've run into out and about. How in the world would we do that? Because health and PE instruction is a requirement for graduation, so we can't just not offer it. So I think opting out is our best option, and it's incumbent on us to provide the accurate information that's easily accessible. But then, like BDDH, once we've provided the information, then it's incumbent on parents to utilize what we have provided and actively look at the curriculum and decide if it's the right thing for their own child. Perhaps we could do a better job of that too, of having curriculum review. Personally, as a board member, I need to do more curriculum review because that's in our wheelhouse. That's by code our responsibility. So when you add all of these things in here about mental health curriculum and lessons, my concern is, what are those lessons? What curriculum are we using? Does it include surveys? Does it ask students constantly about, I don't want to get myself in trouble here. I've had this conversation with many of you one-on-one. Mental health, for me, is a really sticky wicket because we focus on it so much, I almost feel like it becomes counterproductive. And please do not say, Mrs. Dawson said, she doesn't believe that mental health problems are happening. God knows they are happening at a rate unseen before, I think, in our society, at least for my 63 years of existence. But I think we need to be careful about constantly asking students about their feelings today. What happened to resilience and overcoming and a can-do spirit, and let's turn it around and anyway, that's probably a discussion for another day. But in terms of this, once we pass this policy, I want to see what the curriculum is. I know there's one already in place, but one that incorporates these new things that have been added by code, particularly surveys. Any surveys, I know we have a policy for that already too. JOB is already in place. So I think it should be returned to opting out and then better oversight on our behalf of what curriculum are we using. That's my 2 cents.
Mr. Rickett?
Couldn't have said it better myself. And just to go on the record, Ms. Dawson does believe in mental health. Yes, she does. The policy's already in place. It's working. We need to continue to improve upon it, as Ms. Dawson just discussed. And I think Dr. Hornick and the administration have taken some very strong steps to move forward with this.
Ms. Quintern?
So I do have a hang up. Since we don't have anything in place for the opt-outs, I do have concern about changing it to an opt-out because we don't have the processes in place in order to handle this. Dr. Hornick, I did have a couple of questions. This implementation, or this policy, could we word it in a way that it would be implemented in the school year 25-26? Or if we pass it,
Well, so what?
they have a statement at the end basically saying like this policy will be implemented beginning the school year of 25-26.
Well, I think one thing that could be done is for the board to leave it go currently. As I read the information that came out from the General Assembly, when these components become part of the teaching is a year after the VDOE reviews and adopts new standards, which at this point, I believe, Renee, correct, 2027, I believe. And so implementation year would be either 27, 28, or I guess potentially 28, 29. So there is a potential thread here where you all decide that there is nothing that needs to be changed at the moment. I think we do need to be very careful if we would use language such as opt-in to make it seem like the instruction is a la carte, and you can just, I'll pick a little here and I'll do a little here. You know, we're required to teach it, and there's a policy in place to bring concerns about learning resources and how things are being done that we then work with parents to address alternate assignments. But if and I know I've said this to a few board members, if there's an assignment on signs and symptoms of common mental health challenges, and it's brought forward as a concern with the learning resources tied to that, your alternate assignment is not going to be on the rules of flag football, right? And so I don't want to send the mixed message that you can plug and play things that you want and don't want. You enroll in school, you know what you're opting in for. You're enrolling in what we're going to be presenting, what we're going to be doing is curriculum. So I know there's a lot of as far as wanting to see what it looks like. And so one way that you all could go at the moment is live and let it die for the moment.
That's a good segue into my next question. If an alternate assignment is provided, would that student not still get the credit for the course?
Alternatives, of course they would, yes. Right. And so that's how we work with, that's how we work currently with parents. And if there's a concern about the learning resource, if it's a book, if it's how an assignment is done, we work with the parent to come up with one that is more suitable. However, it will cover the same content, therefore we are able to assess a student's mastery of said content and then use that to grade, and then you're not having any problems with losing credit, et cetera. I know, Sandy, you were talking about losing credit, et cetera, and if we don't teach it. So that is how it would work, and there would be going through that process, which we have, which is KBE, or I know it's in the Ks, I'm drawing a blank at the moment. That's why the process is there, so that we can work at the individual level when needed, but also to ensure that there is no threat to a student not getting credit for that, either that course or that potential part of that course that could negatively impact their grade. So I think both those are really good questions. But again, as a collective, we're not really up against this one in a time bound. So you also, I'm happy to recommend to you all that is a way that you could go at the moment, because there is time still to let this parse out and develop. Wait to see what the standards actually are, because it would be at that point that then we would be either looking at a curriculum resource that would likely already be approved by the VDOE, or in a certain case, we might have to build something, and that's a great opportunity to come back to what you said, Ms. Dawson, as far as more community engagement and what's being taught. That's really an opportunity to sit down and say, hey, we have these new standards. Let's put together a task force to decide how we're going to navigate these standards moving forward. It can be more of a robust community discussion where there's more agreement, and you still have the backup, and you still have it in your back pocket that you have a policy on how you can bring forward additional concerns about learning resources and assignments.
Madam Chair, may I ask the superintendent a question?
Can we come back to you?
Of course.
Let Chelsea
Yeah,
finish?
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Board, I would like to again emphasize that parents have the absolute right to the care, upbringing, and education of their children. That being said, I don't know that I'm ready or prepared to move forward with this policy with the information at hand. So, do with that what you will.
May I? Dr. Hornick?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not sure that I heard correctly, but we do have a current opt-out practice available, correct?
Okay, so again, I want to be very careful using opt-out, because that gives the impression, or can potentially give the impression, that you can choose a la carte
Okay.
what standards and what content that you're going to do. What we have is a policy, and I mean, if we could pull it up, maybe it'd be helpful, Laura. I want to say it's KBE.
My second question is, do we still need to approve this based on the amendments that were made based on state changes?
Okay, so the only one that I see that we would need to address, and we might be able to amend, if we go to, and so, I'll go first question first.
Thank you.
There it is, KLB. I almost had it right. Okay. So essentially, we have a policy and an existing form, which is KLB-E, which is a process where the information comes in, and we learn from a parent or guardian that there is a concern about something in the curriculum. A learning resource, broadly speaking, is how this is worded. And so when we get that, it's going to the principal and to Judy and Renee, depending on the level, for us to sit down and learn. Many times what happens is, in most cases, we meet with the parent and go through what it looks like and how we're going to address and assess it. And most of the time, that is what the parent was looking for, and they feel better, and we move on. In the one-offs where we decide, no, this still isn't for me, we work with the parent and the teacher and the principal to develop an alternate assignment that still assesses students' knowledge on that particular piece of content or standard, but isn't down the road of what isn't the same assignment that that parent is clearly feeling is objectionable. And so we work through that. It's just a process. There's no magic to it. It's just communication and meeting with folks and meeting where they are. And then so to say that we have opt out for required curriculum my recommendation to the board is that is not language I would use, because I do not believe we have the authority collectively to say, state of Virginia, thanks, no thanks. There are certain components like family life. It's written that family life, a school division may or may not do it. It's written in the one that a school division may or may not choose to do menstrual education in grades 4 through 8, right? Those are clearly delineated as options. The other things are not. And so yes, you're opting out of that particular assignment, but I worry about how that plays to folks, because I think, okay, I'm not going to do a mental health lesson. I'm going to learn about how to dribble the basketball, and that's not what's going to happen in all actuality. So I also think it's incumbent upon us to be very clear about what can be done and why. And I agree with Ms. Quintern that parents absolutely have the right, but there is a side effect, right? If you don't do it, we can't assess the mastery. There is going to be a side effect on a student's grade. So each decision has a consequence.
Do you know, is there language in code that provides for opt-out?
I am not aware of any.
Okay.
I'm aware of things that there are a few topics that we are given the flexibility to decide whether or not we are going to pursue. And the two that come right off the bat are family life, which has been forever whether you want to do it or not, and in IGA, whatever the last one we just looked at, IGAE, where it's talking about a school division may include a program of instruction on menstrual education. May, right? So we may decide no, we may decide yes. Those are options. And then you get down to such health instruction, it's going to include these topics. So we don't have the authority to say we're not going to do mental health, wellness, and healthy strategies for coping with stress. we have the ability to figure out how we're going to instruct that, but we do not have the authority to decide we're just not going to do it, right? So
Could we get the details of what courses or
Th-
curriculum that provides
this is exclusive. Yeah, this is exclusively the health curriculum
But
in
for-
9th and 10th grade.
For the ones that you were referring to, could we get a list of which things are quote-unquote optional from the state?
So, I'm trying to think. Renee, do you have? I hate to put you on the spot. Do you have any idea where the one I'm aware of is Family Life?
Family Life, that one that you just mentioned, I don't know of a list that's out there.
My proposal would be to
Very few things.
hold off on these until getting that information and possibly getting more details about the current curriculum we have.
The only rub to that, if you wouldn't mind going to IGAG, and I don't think when this policy revision came forward that this was the intent, but when we look at IGAG, the part down here where we're going to annually receive within the first 2 weeks of school, I mean, we have already done that because we were required to send that out. So if we want to leave all of these go, we leave with assigned parent guardians opt-in, we leave that go, but what's down here in the last paragraph needs to go in, and we've already done it. That was something that we were required to do. The state sent us the fentanyl education awareness. It was developed by the department. Susan's team worked to get it out and to all of our students. And well, I think we may have even sent more than 9 through 12. I'm not sure, but I know we definitely sent it 9 through 12 to those parents. So if we want to hold off on, fine with I, G, A, E, F, and G. However, we can't fully hold off on I, G, A, G. We would hold off on the question at the top. This part about, again, we are required to send within the first 2 weeks of school this fentanyl awareness education, which was a 1-pager or a 2-pager, Susan? It was or maybe it was longer than that. Maybe it was 4 pages. 1 page. 1 page. Very nice. So there was a 1-page information sheet developed by the VDOE that we have already sent, right? So, because we didn't want to not send it. Right. So we can leave IGAE and IGAF as they are currently written. My recommendation for IGAG would be leave the question on the table at the top, address gambling, and we are annually receiving within the first 2 weeks of school information by the DOE about fentanyl education and awareness.
I have a few things that I would like to kind of talk about, but also bring, possibly to light. Reading through the VDOE's curriculum and what they're requiring us to input into our schools, there's a lot in there that to me are sensitive materials. Addressing these items in a school setting is somewhat concerning to me because a lot of parents teach these things different ways, different age groups, things like that. So my biggest concern is how those things are presented at the teacher level and what that looks like. The thing that, I'm a parent, I have a student. I've gone through the opting out process. It is not a simple process. I'm sure that opting in would be relatively no different than opting out. I was able to meet with the principal. I was able to go through the process of opting out, getting the curriculum to review, and once I had that curriculum was where it really kind of upset me in a way there seemed to be, and I know that after speaking with the principal and Dr. Hornick, there's things that we are addressing and changing how we're presenting this at the school level. But a couple of the concerns were some of the questions that were on the assignment. Number one, which interferes how you live your life and is a constant? They have two options. One, A is stress, B is anxiety. We are asking these students personal questions. In some cases, they're answering these questions on a Chromebook. And within that Chromebook, that data is being collected by whatever app or program that we are using at the time. So my biggest concern is how these questions are being presented, like I said, at the school level. You know, the other thing that I still don't understand is the grading. These are not questions that you can answer. These are all mostly opinion-based answers. So we're grading our students on a pass or fail. Did they answer the question or did they not answer the question? Because there really is no wrong answer. So as long as they filled in the box, it's an answer. They get credit for that answer. You know, maybe there's some other things that we're looking at, how they wrote the answer, sentence structure, or things that have to go with English could be a possibility. But my biggest concern is that we're asking them information that, number one, the parents should know before we're asking the students these questions. And the other concern is that, you know, again, it's on a Chromebook most of the time. Some teachers still do by paper. You know, the data is being stored, and it's not on the school division's apps. It's on whatever program we're using through that Chromebook. To me, that violates the students' rights under the Children's Online Privacy Protection Rule in COPA. I understand that no information is safe on our devices, but when our students log into their Chromebooks, everything they do is being collected. What happens when that company is bought by another company? Are we informed of this? And do we sign a new privacy agreement with them? I sent Dr. Hornick information earlier today regarding are we getting privacy notifications? Are we providing privacy notifications to our outside sources, and then are they signing them stating that our students' data is protected once it gets there? You know, the biggest questions are who are those agreements with? I know Canvas, for example, was purchased by Instructure. It's still listed as Canvas, but when you log in, it says Instructure. So where did that transition take place is my major concern, again, with the data. And what if that company has a data breach? Where does all of our data go? And how are we protected? So asking personal questions to students in any grade level, I think we need to really sit and kind of look at what that curriculum looks like. Something I had suggested to Dr. Hornick was having some type of, whether it's a separate meeting, if we have a meeting based off of the curriculum, if we go through the standards and have an open meeting where parents are able to come review what we're giving to their students, and at that point, they would be able to either sign an opt-in, a form requesting something different, or an opt-out, whatever that situation ends up looking like. But I think the more information we can show the parents, you know, I'm sitting here, so I understand where I can go, when I can find the opt-out form, things like that. Most parents don't realize that they can do that. And again, is that our fault or is it their fault? It's both of our faults because we don't educate them enough to understand where to go. So opening up and giving them all of the information in a platform like this where they can sit and we can have discussion on about, you know, we can present different age groups at a certain time and they can come in, parents can come in and review that material. Because this is such a personal item or personal issue or sensitive issue, however you want to look at it, I think the more involvement we have with the parents and the more transparency we give to the parents to be able to view it, I think the better off we'll be. So I'm okay with postponing the policies altogether. until we get the new curriculum. But in the meantime, I would definitely like to review what is being implemented right now.
We're going to pass on it, but the only thing I would add to your comments, while I empathize with your concerns, because those are your children, absolutely. We are teaching things that are required by the Virginia Department of Education and, to some point, the law. We want to gather people together and say, not to.
I'm not asking to say yay or nay to this. I'm saying, is this okay how we're presenting it to your student? We have to present it, I understand that, but asking personal questions to get answers and get them to understand something in the curriculum, I don't think is necessary. I think there are other ways to do that, and we need to understand, what parents are comfortable with and implementing that particular type of information to
So
their students.
the administration, in your mind, the administration needs to work on presentation, not really what the context of what we're talking about, but just the presentation of what it is?
I'm to the at the school level, not necessarily the administration, but at the school level, what is interpreted, what the teacher takes from that curriculum that is passed by the VDOE, and how are they implementing that in the classroom. The actual final step is what the parents need to see.
Okay.
Let me ask a question. Thank you. So the curriculum is developed and required by the VDOE, correct? Are the assignments developed by our teachers subsequent to that, or are they?
Did you want to come up, Renee? That's fine.
She said no.
And part of why I'm asking is I want to see if there has been any
She doesn't want
opportunity in
to,
the
but she
past
will.
for parental
She doesn't want
participation in the curriculum
The
development. and
SOLs are the curriculum, and then we go through processes where we meet with groups of teachers, and the teachers work together to come up with how they're going to deliver that curriculum. We do, at times, when we find issue with it, we do make corrections as we go, and it's always like you're building it at sometimes, making changes when you see fit. But the SOLs are what we would say are the standards that we have to teach, but the delivery, we give teachers some leeway. Every teacher's different, and some teachers have different styles of teaching. But yes, that's the curriculum, but no, they don't tell you here is exactly how we want you to present it. We want to make sure the students get these overarching standards.
So based on that answer, I was trying to determine, do the parents have an opportunity to participate in curriculum development or textbook adoption?
Textbook adoption, yes. Materials that we adopt, we do go through that process where there's communities. We go through teachers, principals, district admin, students sometimes, depending on what it is, and parents. And then we have a month where we advertise it. They can come and do public comment. We did that recently with Judy. You might want to come up too with the reading. Might as well come on.
Run to the bus,
Nice
why
try,
don't ya?
Renee.
No, but with the reading
Come on down, Judy.
series that Judy just went through, that we just went through that process. So yes, there is that time for them to give, input on the major instructional materials. But I can hand you those major instructional materials, and I can give you those instructional materials, and then there comes some of that is teacher choice and how they deliver that. But we do work together as teams, so all the people who teach a certain grade level work together to come up with what they think are the best activities and ways to present that curriculum.
I agree
So-
with Madam Chair
Thank you.
that part of my hang-up is with student surveys. I know probably my first year I had a government class, and a parent had called me, and I believe it was middle school, and they were concerned that they had an assignment where they were determining what side of the aisle they sit on. And a parent had concerns over that. And I know it's probably in civics class or something, but I know the subjective nature of some of these assignments do add a layer of worry for me when we're considering whether this should be an opt-in, opt-out, or no language altogether.
I understand what you're saying with that. And I do think that I was a teacher for many, many years. I taught English, high school English. I had parents who would come to me and did not want me to teach a certain book. I always, tried to accommodate them and give them something else. But I also think that we have to think about the fact that you have the right to come and talk to us, and then we will. I've never seen a teacher not accommodate. The concerns that were brought up this earlier by the chairman, we have addressed. I've had some conversations with the teachers, and we worked on that. So I guess that's my point. We have a process for handling that. But to me, a parent should bring that concern to the teacher and the principal, and then the principal will work with us and we work it out, instead of, I'm just going to be honest, if we have to do curriculum and take the time to have every single thing we do looked at before we do it, I don't think we'll ever get anything done.
Thank you very much. I appreciate a little bit more understanding of the process and the challenges.
Yeah. I mean, that would really be difficult to do. I'm just
Almost
being
impossible.
honest. Yes.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. So understanding that the process and getting the information from the school, if the parent only sees a syllabus, doesn't actually see what the questions are going to be. So the syllabus is stating, what they're going to be teaching. We're talking about mental health. And to me, that was my initial response was, I do not want my child
Correct.
doing that. So if I'm not seeing, and then that led to seeing the actual curriculum or the actual assignment for that classroom. So that's my concern, because if they're only seeing mental health and it's being spoken in these terminologies, it doesn't give them a true understanding as to what you're asking. And I know we've changed it, and I appreciate that very much. But just as an example, asking questions like that are personal to that child, and asking how them to, do something, whether it's, an open discussion, and you're having an open discussion in a classroom, and you have a child that does have suffers from anxiety or depression, and you're asking them to do a group exercise about it. I mean, you're putting them in a position that, number one, they're going to feel uncomfortable, but you also can open it up to the other side of it, where these students realize that this student now has something, a mental disorder or an illness or something along those lines. So that's really where mine is coming from. I do
100% understand where you're coming from with that. And I agree that if, this is a new topic, the mental health thing, even like the menstrual cycle, there are going to be parents who don't want their 4th or 5th grader learning, that's their prerogative. I just don't know how we would ever sit down and look at every single worksheet and every single assignment. And I mean, that would be very difficult for us to do, because a lot of teachers will come in, and the way he presents something and she presents something may be slightly different. It's still the same topic. I do agree that some of those questions, and what we talked about was, you take the standard and you keep it in the third person.
Yeah.
And that's the conversation that we've had. And moving forward, that was well received by the teachers, and that they understood where that was coming from. I think those are the kinds of conversations I can have with them and give them that professional judgment to change that. And they did. When I said to them exactly what you're saying, I said, think about it in this way. It's not, you don't have to say, what are your biggest stressors? You can say, what are the major stressors of teenagers across America? Keep it third person. Don't talk about personal. But I would also like to say that I think our teachers form very strong relationships and get to know their kids, and are attuned to students who may have issues, counselors do too. So, and I would hope that if a parent knew that their child had that, they could also reach out to the teacher.
Sure.
Or if they had that, but I just wonder how we would ever do curriculum work if we had to every single time. I just can't wrap my brain around that right now.
Madam Chair, I move that this motion be postponed indefinitely, and I would defer to Ms. Quintern to make a motion based on the recommendations of Dr. Hornick relative to IGAG at this point.
Second for discussion. I don't agree with indefinitely. I think we need to have a date to bring these back. So if I may offer a substitute motion, I move to approve IGAG as amended by Superintendent Hornick, as well as tabling the remainder IGAE, IGAF, and IGAG to bring back by January.
Dr. Hornick, when is the requirements for the implementation of those?
I mean, we're going to have, I mean, honestly, it's going to be a year after the board adopts new standards, right, which is set for 2027.
We got a little time.
We do.
But indefinitely could just mean we're
Yeah,
going to throw it out the window. So
I'm good with January.
I'm good with January.
I'm good with January.
So
Renee,
this
quick
year.
question
Is that
for
this
you
year?
while you guys are standing there. How many years in education?
Oh, good. I knew somebody was going to ask me that.
You have to admit it now.
39,
Judy?
38.
33.
Thank y'all.
How many,
Okay.
Judy?
33.
Almost as, doing as long as I've been alive.
I've been doing it longer than you've been alive.
Sorry, ladies. Have a little levity.
Judy, I'll get him for that. Don't worry.
You all both have a lot more hair than I do. I'm already in the doghouse.
Would you mind restating your motion, please?
Sure. I move to approve IGAG as amended by Superintendent Hornick and table IGAE, IGAF, IGAG until, Laura, do you have the second meeting in January? I don't think it would be good for a reorganizational meeting, but.
You can just say the second meeting in January, and I'll second it.
The second meeting in January,
The 27th.
the 27th.
Second.
All those in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right, so we are on to the last one, JO.
I move to approve as presented.
Second.
All those in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, passes. All right, moving on. We're going superintendent's reports. Over to you, Dr. Hornig.
We still have a few more.
Oh, I'm sorry. We
Yes,
did.
ma'am.
I apologize. My bad. They were not on the list. They were separate. So,
Yes, ma'am. So the first one's DJ-R.
okay.
I have amendment to make for DJ-R. Madam Chair, if you accept a motion, I move to approve DJ-R with an amendment under point 17, under emergency purchases, which would include the language, in the event of an emergency, a contract may be awarded without school board approval, competitive sealed bidding, competitive negotiation, and so on and so forth. So that would be the only amendment that I would be offering for this policy, which effectively would afford emergency purchasing without school board approval.
That was a motion, correct?
Correct.
I need a second for discussion, please. We don't want to discuss it? I will second with discussion. Is there any information that we would like to add? Ms. Harrington?
I have a I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Based on recent documentation that we've gotten from our board attorney and changes to the Virginia Procurement Act and some new processes that we've been experimenting with in terms of communication with Dr. Hornick and the board, I think it's prudent to take some additional time to review the entirety of this policy, the nuts and bolts of it, cleaning up some language in it. It's not time sensitive, as I understand it, as it stands. So I would move that we delay action until some
Second
future
meeting in
date.
January.
January 20th.
Second.
Were you saying January 22nd, or were you second?
7th.
Okay.
January
Sorry.
27th, and I seconded it.
Okay. Any other discussion? Or, all right. All those in favor by postponing this and reworking the whole policy?
Aye.
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 Aye. Sorry. All those opposed? All right. Postponed.
Last one, Laura.
We had the JFC-R, Standards of Student Conduct. This is addressing, I believe, the cell phone policy.
Madam Chair, I move to approve as presented.
I would second for discussion.
All those in favor of discussion, or, yes, say aye.
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 Aye. Open for discussion.
I would just request an amendment be added to item 20, and that amendment would be to add the word communication after electronic in the second sentence. So it would read, students may possess any personal electronic communication device on school property, et cetera, et cetera.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Second.
Any other discussion?
I had that exact comment. Thank you for bringing that forward. I think this leaves it way too wide open because technology is changing by the second. I read that there's glasses now. Y'all know about those?
What?
That are communication devices, your glasses. Anyway, that's a really smart thing to add, so I second.
All right. All those in favor
Fourth,
by
whatever it is.
by adding the communication after electronics. I believe that was what
Aye.
you said.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Passes.
Mr. Hill, you need to tell us about these glasses.
He has them on.
Do you really?
Those are it. Those are Apple certified.
He's so cool.
It's getting late.
Greg.
What am I
It's Greg,
This
a.k.a.
microphone.
Tony Stark.
All right.
Oh, my.
That was all of them, correct?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Over to you, Dr. Hornig.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'm proud to bring Captain Seal,
He's sleeping.
present, present and accounted for. Doing great. Captain Seal is one of our favorites around
Sure.
Orange.
Yes, sir.
And we appreciate the time that you spend with us, Brian. And I think it's really important to hear from both sides of both organizations about the partnership that exists. So, Brian, I'm happy to turn it over to you.
Absolutely. I'm getting schooled tonight on how I introduce myself to you all. So the person grading me back there, we'll see how I do it. All right. Dr. Hornick, thank you for the invitation.
Did your mom proofread this?
I did.
Or is this off
I
the
did
cuff,
put some
Ms.
notes
Seal?
together. I let her, take a look at it.
Okay.
And,
All right.
make
Should
sure
be okay
make
then.
it make sense, right? Madam Chair, fellow board members, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Marshall, is that good? Yes. All right. I just want to give you all a little background on myself. I was born and raised here in Orange County, graduated from Orange County High School in 2006. I'm still actively involved in the school system as a wrestling coach. Of course, here at the Sheriff's Office, I'm also a captain of the School Resource Officers Division, so I get to see that side of it well. And I also was an SRO from 2016 to 2020, right before COVID happened. But also within the school system, I have my mother that's a teacher at Prospect Heights. My daughter goes to to Prospect Heights. I have a wife that's a teacher at Orange Elementary. My other daughter goes to Orange Elementary. My sister's a teacher at Orange Elementary. My niece goes to Orange Elementary. I got cousin-in-laws. They're all at Orange Elementary. So we are heavily involved in the school system. And of course, I guess my great-grandfather, he's dead and gone now, but Bud Graham, he was actually assistant superintendent here at Orange County Public Schools for 1965 to 1989. Too much math.
Your mom helped you with that one. I know that one.
She did. Absolutely. I'm sure he didn't have the opportunity to have the sheriff's office in front of the school board like you all do tonight. But you know, his wisdom, his temperament is always something I admired. So I just wanted to let you all know, you know, about a little bit about myself and my family and the people around me. So obviously, I offer you all that to help you understand. You know, with everything that I do have here involved with the Orange County Public School Systems, I'm deeply vested in the safety and security of your schools, right? We at the Sheriff's Office obviously would like to thank you for allowing our office to be actively involved in the security assessment and needs of the public school system. While most board members may not be fully aware, the superintendent and his cabinet members, we meet or talk on the phone almost daily. I think it was 8 or 10 of us at lunch today. You know, had a 3-4 hour meeting this morning, you know, broke bread, continued talking. And this is all about, you know, the needs and things that we can do together better. Of course, we want to be proactive. We don't want to be reactive to things that are going on. We want to continue adding tools to our toolbox as there is no fix-all for every situation at every school. We also must find the right balance between the two extremes of the best education possible. Your physical plant being the most warm, welcoming environment that we can provide the best education for these students versus let's put up razor wire fences and metal detectors at every single door, and we got to wand them down and pat them down before they can even come in. So where's that balance, right? Obviously, it's a difficult approach, and it must involve the majority of the stakeholders, a lot of the people in this room involved in all that process. And of course, the unfortunate reality is not everybody in the general public is going to know our playbook. We do not want to give our playbook and everything we're going to do to the folks out there that maybe want to do some harm to the school systems. So those are a lot of conversations that happen, you know, between us, between the sheriff's office and the school board and the superintendent and their cabinet members. And it's not, unfortunately, available for everybody to know, right? There are some things, of course, we're going to share and talk about, but we can't tell them everything. So hopefully the public can understand that piece of it, right? So, of course, our collective work on the Blue Ribbon Panel and the Safe and Supportive Schools Task Force. Right? Did I do that right, Ms. Hill? Okay. All right.
And which Justin will be sending out, and the board members that expressed interest at the last meeting. We are planning that here within the next probably 2 weeks, correct? So we're doing some work with our Blue Ribbon Panel so that there are some tangible ideas that we can bring forward to quite a large group. That could be upwards of 50 people. So, sorry,
sir. Nope, absolutely. I was just going to emphasize, you know, we're going to continue to work with you all on providing that safe and reliable educational environment to all the Orange County students and staff, obviously, and to include my mother and all the rest of my family members and all the rest of the students here in Orange. So, thank you all for the time. I appreciate it. The public speaking thing isn't something I usually do. Sheriff Amos,
you did very well.
I said Sheriff Amos. Wow. Sheriff Smith. That's not the first time I've done that. Sheriff Amos was obviously my sheriff for 15 years, and then all of a sudden I bumped in, and Sheriff Smith is now the sheriff. So that was a hard change. One day they were calling for the captain. I'm sitting there at my computer, not paying any attention, and Sheriff Smith was in my office. And I'm like, dude, are you going to answer? But obviously they were calling for me. So yeah, it happens. He had to go to the Boys and Girls Club gala tonight, so he could not be here. I'm here on his behalf, so we're all in this together for sure. So, yes, sir?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well done.
Thank you for your information. The presentation was awesome, and definitely for taking care and keeping us all safe.
Yes, ma'am.
And I just want to thank you for coming.
Yes, sir.
And, you know, showing the community the relationship that the sheriff's office with Dr. Hornick and the team up here that you guys have.
Absolutely.
School security and safety of the children, which you very well laid out, you have a very personal stake in, is everyone's priority.
Yes, sir.
And how you guys handled the situation from a few weeks ago with the professionalism and just went about it, kept your head down, got the job done. Thank all of you and Sheriff Smith as well.
Sheriff Smith. Don't tell Sheriff him. All right.
Captain, thank you very much.
I'll still be here the rest of the evening. So.
And in line with safety and security, Mr. Sarver, if you'd like to come forward and discuss where you currently stand and where we currently are with our dive into the potential for school bus stop arm cameras.
So I'm going to rattle off a rather startling statistic. 43.5 million. That's how many stop arm violations are reported annually across the country. That's reported. It's probably twice that, if the truth is told. So how do you stop that? Well, obviously, there are lots of different methods and mechanisms, and it's a layered approach, just like everything else with school security. There's not a, end-all, be-all. The number one tool that we have is behind the steering wheel. We train our drivers in very specific procedures to ensure student safety. They're monitoring the student from the time they get out of their seat to the time they're beside them, to the time they get down the steps. The very last thing they do before they wave that child across is do a traffic check. I would love to tell you that making the decision that we just don't have kids crossing the road is something we could do, but it's really not. We're limited by, we're limited by time, if nothing else, because to cover both sides of the street, you would have to add either more buses or you'd have to make the routes just prohibitively lengthy. So you have to take a layered approach to it. And we've already put some things in place. If you've ever been behind one of our buses, you may have noticed an extra set of lights mounted above the bumpers. They flash red and white. They will, if you're behind the bus a very long time, it will, if you have a tendency toward, with epilepsy or with seizures, it's not a good place to be because it's very intense. But it's a device that we've implemented for probably the last 6 years as an additional measure to draw more attention to a stopped school bus, and it's been effective. But that being said, I would say we probably have at least 10 or 12 stop arm violations a day. So, how do you correct a problem? One other tool is to implement stop arm cameras. Now, the cameras themselves don't do anything to stop the individual from violating lights. It allows us to catch them. It allows them to be fined. Using cameras is a civil violation. They've made some changes to Virginia law that allows us, and there's about half the states have the provision to treat this as a civil matter instead of criminal. The standard of evidence is a lot lower, so you can use video footage for it. The cooperation with our local law enforcement, this is another one of those areas. Before Sheriff Smith actually took office, he and I had a conversation. He was talking to me about the school zone enforcement cameras, and this requires this concept requires the same types of changes to local regulations and code to be able to do the enforcement. So now that we have community buy-in for the school zone cameras, I think it's also an appropriate time to go ahead and bring this technology forward. Excuse me. We have the opportunity to partner with the same company. The advantage to that is that we would be able to lessen the administrative burden on the law enforcement agency. If we do a separate RFP and find a separate vendor, the sheriff's office is going to have to validate every every fine, every citation. If they have to have a separate company to deal with, it doubles their burden. So At this point, I'm not looking for any formal approvals. I just kind of want a nod from the board that we can go ahead and move forward with some discussions and bring back some contracts and things to look at in more detail. But I believe it's a good direction for the board. It's an additional layer for student safety.
I have a question, Madam Chair. These cameras, do they have night vision? Because we do have, especially as we're heading into winter months, we're going to
Absolutely,
really
and
morning
it's
late
more
night.
than one camera. They actually take about 6 pictures.
And with it not being a criminal traffic violation, is that prohibitive because of state law?
It is. And the citation goes to the registered vehicle owner. So it's not
Not the driver, it's the license plate.
You're not able to necessarily, with the camera footage, you're not able to necessarily make a positive identification of the driver. That's why you can't make it a criminal charge.
I'm all in for this. It's no secret I've been involved in a serious car accident recently, and it's not fun.
Yeah.
And
I'm
any
still-
way we can improve.
I'm still going to stand here and tell you that our best method of prevention is the only thing that we really can control, and that's our driver releasing the student. And that's a lot of responsibility for an individual. And that's something that every one of our drivers takes very seriously, and every single one of our drivers, you know, before they would allow a student to be injured, they're going to do everything in their power. You know, I've subbed myself. There have been situations where you have to reach out and grab, prevent a student from, you know, getting off the bus if they're not paying attention to you. So, you know, but I do believe this is a valuable tool, and this would be something, we had a discussion about this with the Blue Ribbon panel. It's, again, this doesn't work if we don't have the relationship with law enforcement. Because unfortunately, if anybody bears the burden with this, it's going to be the law enforcement agency. It's time. They have to validate each time there's a citation. And as far as cost, it's the same model. We don't actually own the cameras. We don't have the burden of purchasing or maintaining them. It's all managed. It's paid for by the citations. So.
One final question.
Yes.
What about when buses are stopped at like railroad crossings or for other problems where, you know, the lights may go off because they're physically stopped? How do we ensure that we are assigning these violations appropriately?
So every time there is a violation, that it gets sent to a law enforcement officer to review the video. And if the law enforcement officer sees a reason that the citation wouldn't be valid, it's rejected and it's kicked out. There's very specific requirements for when the stop arms are activated. Drivers have to activate them based on their vehicle, traffic speed. So on Route 20, for example, where it's 55 miles an hour, they have to activate their amber lights 200 feet before the bus stop. So if the driver hasn't activated the lights in proper time and you end up passing, if they open the door while traffic is, imminently too close to stop, those citations may not be valid either.
Okay. Thank you, Justin. That's all I have.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions?
I'll look forward to more information.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sarver, and thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, and I'll yield the time back.
All right, we're going to take a 5-minute recess.
positions on proposed legislation, develop lines of communication with elected officials, and direct advocacy efforts towards supporting, opposing, or proposing necessary legislation. So we have had 3 meetings, I believe, over this current school year, and we have definitely established and started to make some relationships with our legislators and the group of people that are included in this process. But I think that we are ready to reach out and ask other school boards and districts if they would like to add their voice to the process. So I didn't know if you had anything else you wanted to add on that, Ms. Quintern?
No, I would move that we present this to the local districts.
So I would also just request that when we send it out, I can get the school divisions and the specific board chair's name and add that to this and mail that. So it's specifically to an individual and a school division versus just a generic letter. Okay.
Should this come from our board or should it come from just us two?
I think it should come from the board.
Okay, so maybe we change the footer as
I think
well.
we did that with
Signature.
the letter we had sent to our Orange County Board of Supervisors. We made it
believe
from the
so.
board. So,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And I don't think we need action, but if you feel we do, we can make a motion on that.
I like it.
Okay.
Nice letter. Yep.
All right. If I may, for just another moment, as the audience may be aware, and as I just stated, some of the things that we have an interest in, Ms. Chelsea Quintern and myself had looked at a bill that has come out. It was the first bill in line for the General Assembly, and we have some interest in following up with our legislatures towards this. I also spoke with the superintendent. He is tentatively interested, wants to make sure that we would not be putting additional burdens on our staff and students relative to testing. This was a bill that was introduced last year by one side of the legislature, and it had support from both sides, but eventually died at the end of the process. It was reintroduced this year, and it's House Bill 1548, and it is regarding the teaching of civics. So I think that it would be something that I would like to look more in depth at, and if the board would like us to maybe have some conversations and follow up with our legislators, that this board, we could bring it back first, of course, after we do a little bit more research to see if the board may be interested in us officially and formally writing a letter in support of this.
Ms. Harrington, could I ask, is this already proposed for this? Do you know what the bill number is going to be for this year?
HB 1548. It was the first bill introduced this year by the General Assembly, and it came from a Republican in Delaware who was a former high school history teacher, Mr. Lee Ware of Powhatan. And if anyone is interested in looking at the article, it was in the September 26th, 2024 Orange County Review.
Could we add this item to the next meeting? So that way we have time to review it and then we can provide whether or not, as a board, we want to stand behind it or not.
Sure, I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, I
Adding
think
it
that
to
sounds
the
reasonable.
board meeting. All right. Anything else?
Would you like a report out of what we discussed?
Yes, absolutely.
So Ms. Byram was kind enough to take the minutes this go around. But we discussed teacher retention, including incentives in rural areas, cost to compete adjustments, the 2025 budget. We discussed the student outcomes, in particular our lab schools, which have had raving reviews both in Germanna and at Mary Washington. Inviting Virginia Department of Education members. I haven't moved forward in that, but we collectively agreed that it would be good to have their ear as well. We discussed the legislation about all nonprofit organizations receiving funds from taxpayers in an amount greater than $20,000 shall be required to comply with FOIA laws, as well as funding for weapons detectors. And our next meeting is going to be in December 19th at 11:30. And that concludes the legislative committee report out.
All right. Ms. Harrington, school board governance protocols.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, I am going to request to delay discussion on these items. This would be item 7B and 7C and 7D relative to school board governance protocols, student outcomes-based governance, and school board policy development. I appreciate the opportunity to bring this to the board, but I believe, number one, based on the time that it would require for us to truly have a good discussion and conversation on these issues, it may be better spent in a different format. So maybe either a subcommittee or a day-type retreat where we fully discuss in a long term on the different impacts and concerns or suggestions based on my proposals and other board members' input and proposals, hopefully. So I would request that we bring this back at another date and use that date to discuss this matter in full with no other priorities on the agenda at that point.
Okay.
I would prefer it to be as a retreat, so we have a full day to dive into that and what other items we decide.
If I could say that too, when I saw and looked at everything that Ms. Harrington had attached, there's a lot of great information here, important information, I think, for us to work through. But this is not, this is an 8-hour discussion.
Or
At
multiple
least.
times, yes.
Right. So could we reschedule the retreat, please? I would like, I don't know what the next step is, giving you dates to try to confirm with our venue or what, but this needs to be a retreat item, in my opinion.
If we have any availability in
The
December.
retreat item, perhaps.
I think December would be good because then it would be before our reorganizational meeting.
Right, good idea.
All right, I will reach it out and find out.
Thank you very much.
So then we're moving on to E, correct? Correct. Yeah, okay. So the regional school board report from ATIUMW.
So we are looking between two policies for cell phone use. We're also having the same discussions at Mary Washington. Basically, the biggest difference between the two is one has an emergency clause to use cell phones and the other doesn't. In my opinion, having the emergency clause is important. It provides ease for parents. However, it still emphasizes the need to have your phones put away and off during instructional hours from the time the school bell rings in the beginning of the day to the time it rings at the end of the day. So I just wanted to get some feedback from you all, which policy you prefer. So that way, when I go back to the next meeting, I can push for whatever our board desires.
Is it just that specific change between the two policies?
Correct. So that would be under, I believe it's exceptions. Yes. Point 5. There is an exception under B, emergency situations. Students may use cell phones and personal electronic communication devices to communicate with family or authorities in the event of emergency.
So taking out the and/or record, is that what that was?
There's no emergency situation
Okay.
clause in the other policy.
Gotcha.
And just for clarification, this is our recommendation to you for what you will carry forward to the ATIUMW.
I apologize. There is a and/or record clause under the 2004. Sorry, I'm making sure this is the right number. I believe it's version 2. That's the highlighted.
Yeah, that's the one I pulled up.
And so the situation I had considered is, if a student is going to be injured or whatever, with car accidents, a board member had actually, their family member was going to be charged with the accident, saying that they were the ones at fault. However, there was a dash cam that was able to be reviewed, the footage, and it turned out the other person was at fault. So the camera was used in a manner to assist, and I think that there could be in numerous situations, whether it be in classrooms, in the hallways, whatever, to allow recording of whatever situation in the event of an emergency.
I just don't like the language of emergency because I'm sitting here thinking of my son. He's in the 8th grade. He forgot his cleats for football practice. Dad.
So that's not an emergency.
Right. What if I'm a parent that says, no, that's an emergency? You know, I think sometimes, you know, being vague and trusting teachers and administrators
so
to do their, I'll finish my thought and then I'll shut up. You know, allow them to do their job. I'm not a big fan of giving examples in a worst case scenario, but if you let your mind go to a worst case scenario, I don't think a teacher's first priority is going to be, you know, I'm in an emergency, emergency. You know, I don't think they're going to be too worried about if a kid's got a cell phone out. They're probably worried about locking the doors and making sure everybody's getting underneath the table and staying quiet. So sometimes, you know, being a little vague is good. Go ahead.
I was going to ask, would you want emergency defined here, or?
I would be a proponent of leaving it out, you know, totally. And allow allow our teachers, and I had it pulled up, and she's got it right there, you know, pulled up, and may use a cell phone to communicate and or record. I would leave B out.
Okay, so what they're considering is they're allowed to use phones to call home. But what my proposition was is to allow students to record. So we've had an instance where something happened in a classroom, and I would say that that's an emergency. And the only way we would really being able to ensure that that was an actual situation was because we had a recording of it.
Yeah. And I don't disagree with you. I mean, I really don't. I don't think, you know, line B is going to stop it. But I also don't want to condone it as well. You know, and all of us speak with teachers, you know, as I, you know, talk to teachers, you know, that cell phone is a problem in the schools. It is a problem in the schools, and whatever we can do to support teachers, staff, and administration to limiting, not restricting, limiting, you know, a cell phone being out is, to me, the best scenario.
Madam Chair, I would just share the concerns that Mr. Rickett stated, and also would potentially want more information relative to what Justin shared with us about recording. I don't know if this would impact, you know, align with that potential inability to record things. But I would prefer not to have recording in there. I think that it opens opportunity up to record too many things, but I just again would defer to either legal or Justin's sharing of information relative to the many laws and regulations around recording things.
I think in some circumstances, less is more. And the less we try to define this, the better off we are. So students are savvy and smart, and they're going to figure out if this is an emergency, I'm going to use my phone and do what needs doing.
Unless their phones are locked up in yonder bags. and they
Is
don't
that
have.
the situation there?
They're considering it, so that might
Well,
be
if you're in an
another.
emergency, how do you go to your yonder bag and get your phone?
But that's what another point that I wanted to bring up. How do we feel about locking kids' phones where they have no ability to unlock it unless they are outside of the classroom and can scan it on the.
I'm not
So
in
is that
favor of.
proposed? Is that actually being proposed?
There's been conversations at the last meeting about that as well. Two separate and distinct conversations, but yes, it was brought up at the last meeting.
Yeah, I would say if that is proposed, that would be a discussion that needs to be had.
Keep in mind, some of the other participating school divisions are already doing that.
So maybe I would like to have the board's position on both of those items then.
Yeah, I think you have, if I'm remembering correctly, Fredericksburg City is they're putting away and they're going into a yonder bag the minute they walk through the door.
Yep.
For intents and purposes. Caroline, Stafford, and King George are using a yonder bag if you get in trouble with your phone. We're taking it and locking it in a bag. So two different ways that other groups are doing it and spending their money.
So, for clarity, I can push to remove the emergency situation clause, but what's been presented is these two, which both have emergency situations. One is just to allow recording, and the other is just for communicating with family or authorities.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately this is partially our decision, but we only have one part of
So I
the
want to represent the
decision-making
board.
process. I prefer leaving out the recording. I think, again, if we're in an actual emergency situation, I think the students will figure out a way. I do have a problem with locking them up and not giving them access at all. So I would say yes to version 1 with the taking out the and recording. And then I would not propose or
Advocate to lock them up.
advocate for locking them up. That would be my stance.
I agree.
I would agree on that.
Okay.
I mean, I would go further, and I already stated this, I would remove B altogether, but, you know, I'm not a fan of locking stuff up.
Okay.
That's all, Madam Chair.
All right. F is also yours, Ms. Quintern.
Again, cell phones. We've been talking about this for some time. I stand by this resolution. I think it's important because it highlights the fact that we know that there may be emergencies and that would necessitate the use of personal electronic devices, whether that be for diabetic students that use apps to monitor their blood sugar, or whether that be another form of emergency, but it allows students to use it at that time. And it also reiterates that the board understands the need for parents to contact their children for emergencies during the day. And the expectation is that administrative staff contact the student during the day in a reasonable amount of time. Reasonable would be, if we've got, for instance, the gun situation, we got all the parents calling in, we can't contact the students. That's unreasonable to expect that of the front office until things are calmed down and figured out. But I think that we do need to ensure that parents have access to their students if something is going on.
I don't disagree with anything that you have in the resolution. I'm just not sure that we need it. We already have policy in place. I'm also not a fan of legislating by executive order, and although I agree with Governor Youngkin's stance on this, I don't think an executive order was the best way to go about getting it done. on either side of the aisle. I think that's terrible governance.
It's lazy.
So,
Yeah.
and my question, as I was thinking through this, I'm thinking, okay, policy I can easily find when I go to board docs. Resolutions, I can't find anywhere. Once we pass them, where are they housed? Where do they live? How do we know what resolutions we have passed? How do parents know to look at this for the reasons you just mentioned? Ms. Byram, that's probably a question for you, but, and resolutions by law, based on what I've researched over the last couple of weeks, really are more of a temporary measure than a permanent fix like a policy is. A policy more legally binding, a resolution's kind of just a.
I look at it as a statement, and this is the board's position on whatever the issue is.
I would vote against passing it. I don't think we need it. Not that I dislike it. I just don't know what purpose it really serves.
I think I can, again, I like everything it says. I think if the resolution, if there wouldn't have been an executive order and we were reviewing our policies regardless, I think having this stance prior to approving a policy, which is basically stating the same thing, not stating the exact same thing, but emphasizing the cell phone use particularly. So, again, I don't know that a resolution is going to do anything. I know it's a statement. You know, could it be something? It could be a statement. It could be, you know, we could also do some type of, Ms. Byram has placed a special area on our website for us to do, you know, a letter to the public or announcements or things like that. Maybe it's something that's more of an actual statement and not labeled as a resolution. So, again, I just think, I don't know that it's necessary at this point since the policy has already been passed.
Well, again, this was drafted after the board agreed to have a resolution drafted. But correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Hornig, I don't believe we have anything in policy that states that we expect administration to contact students during the day in a reasonable amount of time.
No, and I don't think you need to, because that's absolutely what we're going to do. I mean, unless you want to add it to the policy. I mean, quite honestly, a resolution isn't going to make us do it or not do it. We're going to do it because it's best practice. It could be something that you all decide to add into policy.
I would agree with the statements by both Darlene and Ms. Anderson. I don't think that it's necessary at this time. I appreciate the intent behind it, but it has no teeth, and we do have policy, and we also have current process, I believe, that was distributed to staff on how to implement that. So I don't support this at this point.
No, I'm good.
Oh, you have a fever?
Yeah. I don't talk that much, do I? While Ms. Harrington's struggling.
So it would be,
I would like to see something in policy then.
Dr. Hornig, can we look at a particular policy that we could implement or add that to?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. All right. All right, moving on, safety, I believe Ms. Quintern as well, so.
I think this was just to reiterate about the committee, which you've already advised that Justin's going to be giving us information about.
Yes, ma'am. I believe Ms. Harrington and Ms. Quintern were expressed interest in the last meeting. Yes, ma'am.
And then we also covered the weapons detectors. Is there any progress on that?
Yes, actually, did you want to talk about the Blue Ribbon Panel meeting, Justin, as far as where we landed on potentially securing a vendor? We think that we're going to need to have a solution that is tailored for our buildings. And I actually believe that the solution at the high school might be different than our solution at Locust Grove Middle School. But if you wanted to go, Justin, appreciate it.
So the decision we came to is during the Blue Ribbon panel was to actually draft a couple of RFPs to try to get some proposals in that are, not only address weapons detection, but also address topics of, panic buttons, things of that nature. More of a total safety security type solution. When you have a situation like this, looking at the whole big picture. That way we have an opportunity to, rather than just have a knee-jerk reaction to a situation, we're going to make a good decision. Again, creating layers of security for our buildings and take a very thoughtful approach to it. Make sure that it fits. Make sure it does what it's supposed to do. So, there may not be an immediate action with it. But the goal is to get enough information to where we can, funnel it down to be our best solution.
Well, the action you're taking is the discussion that's going on as far as implementation.
Right.
But, it's not a one-size-fits-all, and I love the fact that you continue to say there's no one thing. If it was, it would have already been done.
Absolutely.
All the way across the country. So, thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Mr. Sarver.
Thank you.
Is everything? Ms. Quintern?
Yes.
Okay. H, Ms. Dawson.
Yes, I sent an email dated on September 11th to the board, Dr. Hornick and Ms. Byram, with several attachments about a company called OnBoard as a potential alternative to Board Docs. Our contract with Board Docs will expire in March, and I'd like to have a smooth rollover to a new provider. And based on, I had a Zoom call with a representative from OnBoard, and he presented their product, and that was the information I forwarded to you. And in my opinion, it's at least as good as Board Docs and in some ways better, and the price is extremely competitive. I was told after the fact, I apologize, that I did not know, Ms. Anderson and Ms. Byram had also already had a conversation with OnBoard, and I don't know the results of all of that, but I would like for us to pursue a meeting with their reps and a demonstration for us to see their product for review and consideration. Their recommendation is a 90-day transition period, and since our contract expires in March, we should be thinking about moving forward on something by January. They were immediately responsive with questions and seemed very willing to work with us, and their promise is to walk you through all of the training, the first 3 meetings that you use their product as we acclimate to a new program. So with the permission of the board, the approval of the board, I'd like to go ahead and pursue setting up a meeting with one of their reps, Ms. Byram, Dr. Hornick, whomever else might be a key player in this.
So to add on to that, Ms. Byram, I have also been I've looked at OnBoard before, and just trying to come up with alternatives to Board Docs if necessary, finding something that, is similar to Board Docs. Obviously, cost is a major concern. I'm personally not a fan of going from one company directly into another company. I think there's a way that we can actually create this through the school division itself. So we are having a meeting, hopefully this week, possibly not till next week, in regards to kind of setting an outline of what we would like our board docs to look like, or our administrative, I don't know what you want to call it, but something that we could build internally that would not require a contract.
Ms. Byram, what did we use before we had board docs?
We simply were posting a PDF with links.
Okay. 'Cause I've searched a lot of divisions in the state. Most, of course, are with board docs. But I even found a couple that just did Google. So that's a possibility too. I still think it's worth looking at,
Yeah,
just
I would
as a
definitely like to.
comparison.
Yep.
And obviously, we want to make it something that's an ease of transition for you.
Yeah, I think ultimately, I was able to speak with them, but we weren't able to get together to talk to them at the same time. So I think it would be a good presentation for.
Dr. Hornick, what do you think?
Excuse me, could I request that we maybe go through a process of like an RFP or IFP and have other agencies come in and present options to us? I did look at the onboard. I was impressed with it. Actually impressed. I don't know what they have experience relative to public school board meetings. I definitely agree with Ms. Anderson that we need to make sure that this is appropriate, and Ms. Byram wants to work with whatever program we recommend. But I think that since we're going to be looking at this and we have until March, maybe we can look and see if there are any other
I
options
have
also.
attempted to find other options. They're not.
I was going to say.
They're pretty few and far between.
I know.
But I don't
Google
disagree.
the option, there's
Yeah,
not
there's
that
not
many to
much.
choose.
And their experience, that question came up, is their experience in K-12 education is actually not a lot. They work more with universities at this point and corporations, and are working to get into the K-12 market. But based on what I saw, it just seems really similar to what we're seeing right here. So it's worth a look, in my opinion.
Could that look be at a regular board meeting?
I guess it would be up to them if they would be willing to present at a board meeting.
I would suggest if they're not, they may not want to be the company that works with us.
Well, my question was to Dr. Hornick.
Thank you. Sorry about that, Jack.
That's all right. I mean, I use it this much, and you use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then Laura uses it beyond that. The more tailored presentation that Laura showed me about onboard, which I believe is probably the one that Ms. Dawson saw, as opposed to the first one that Ms. Anderson and Laura might have seen, it was certainly much better than what would have been initially seen. Leery is how I'll go with it.
But
That's
you're comfortable with Ms. Dawson's idea of just taking a little look-see
Sure.
because we have time?
yes, sir.
Laura, what do you think? You like it?
I agree with taking a look at it. I agree with what Dr. Hornick said. The second look at it was much better, the links that use it. So I'm willing to take a look. I am a little nervous, but.
Well, let's take a look.
Always say no, thank you.
That's right.
Just one more question. Are there currently any specific items that you don't feel Board Docs is providing us or needs significant improvement with?
Not really. I think Board Docs does a really good job. I don't necessarily like the way you enter the minutes into it. It's not as pretty, but that's just a preference. So everything else, it does everything I need it to do.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving on. Ms. Dawson?
Alcinda Hatfield was here in May giving us a presentation on the Just Ask Human Trafficking curriculum. And at that time, Ms. Harrington asked if we could compare it with the options listed on the VDOE. And so I've spent some time digging through those. They have 3 options listed. The prevention project is one on the VDOE website that's currently being utilized in some other divisions where I've talked to board members, and they're favorable towards that one. I personally, this is just me, I still would really like to look into the Anti-Trafficking International for the following reasons. Number one, and again, this is me personally, I've met the people, I've attended their community forums, I've heard their passion and their heart for protecting our young people from the tragedy. Just horrific that's occurring all across our country, and I believe in their product because I've seen it firsthand. So that's why I'm advocating for it. However, apart from my personal feelings about it, the biggest benefit that Just Ask gives us, by their statement, is that their curriculum is discussion-based and in person, whereas most of the others are recorded modules, and our children, in my opinion, spend enough time in front of a screen. So I'd rather they be talking to a person. So it's designed by professionals in law enforcement, education, social services, and survivors. The lessons are specifically designed for each grade level with true cases where the victim was the same age as the students that will be taking the course. That personal interaction that is part of Just Ask program is what has been positively spoken about the most, and the dialogue between the students and the teachers is an extremely fruitful part of the program. It also covers more than the 3 options that the VDOE offers. And I would reiterate, we do have school divisions in Virginia currently using this program as well. They train the teachers, they offer information nights with the parents, they're available with updates throughout the contracted time. They're very responsive to requests for information, and they make resources available to the schools to pass along to students, parents, and staff. And then just late this afternoon, this is breaking news, I heard from one of the directors, and she said they do have this year available one more scholarship, and they are willing to offer it to Orange County. And that would provide training materials, ongoing technical support, and a license for 3 years. And if we start training and preparation this semester, we could begin teaching it in the spring semester. And it's this year, 24-25, that scholarship is being offered. They need confirmation from the school district, a signed MOU, and a scheduled training date in order to move forward with providing the funding for 3 years' worth of their program. Obviously, we need to take the step back and make sure that's what we want to do, but just to let you know that that's available. So I'm asking tonight that we take the next step, which would be a meeting with one of their representatives, Dr. Hornick, Dr. Honecker, probably Sheriff Smith, our SROs, secondary principals, secondary health and PE people, board members, to look at it a little bit more in depth and potentially move forward with their offer to accept a scholarship to implement it here in Orange County.
Any discussion? I think that would be, I think it would be a great idea to set up the meeting between and get the people that would be closely affected by it to be able to get the presentation more personally. I'm assuming it's going to be a little bit more in depth than what it was when she was here as well. So
That was more of an overview.
yeah, I think that would be a great option.
So what process should be used to set that up? Is that a Dr. Hornick thing?
Yes.
So I'll send you a phone number.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you all. Moving on, board member, future agenda items. So is there anything that we need to add here?
The student form for public comment, parental notification.
I can't hear you.
The student form for public comment and parental notification.
A prep committee report. I went and totally forgot to put it on tonight's agenda. So I'll do it next time.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
May I request that the board considers changing our start time back to 5 o'clock? I don't know if that is still an issue for Ms. Quintern, but I know that I believe that was the original reason to change it, and I'm hoping now that you no longer have a job so far away, you may be able to be here, and we could move it up a little.
So Mondays, I'm still
Are you?
up there. But the primary reason was to allow the public opportunity to come. We do have a lot of commuters, and I think it's a little bit more engaging for our community members to be able to attend in the evenings.
Sorry.
Okay, I don't know if anyone else had a concern or issue, but I thought I'd throw it out there. I did not realize the full picture of why the change was made, so thank you.
Well, maybe we just, think 6. I mean, the Board of Supervisors meet at 5, and they run the entire county. So every board actually in our county meets at 5, except for us. But, to meet, to your point, maybe we go to 6, and maybe the work sessions are 5.
You'll be meeting without me
On
Mondays.
what time works for you?
I can't get here before 6:30, and that's pushing it. Sometimes it's after 6:30.
Okay.
Well, may I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Since it is October, we'll have a reorganizational meeting
Oh,
in
okay.
January. And then we can discuss the days of the week that we would prefer and times, so that we could, obviously may have different schedules at that point. So I think this is something that I would just hold off till the end of the year.
That seems reasonable. Excuse me. I would also request that we bring our student representative from the high school to give us a report. I know that we had talked about that and agreed on it last year. The first few months this year have been kind of crazy, so it didn't seem appropriate to even discuss it at that point from everything going on. But I definitely am still interested, and I would like to have the superintendent invite him to come back, or her to come back, and maybe not on a monthly basis or every other month, some type of routine basis. Thank you.
All right, board member comments? Did you find it? Okay, good.
I would like to entertain the idea of us having public comment at each board meeting.
I second that emotion.
Okay, we can definitely consider that. That would be something we could add to the.
I also wanted to give kudos to those that planned and attended Career Day. I saw many friendly faces there, and it was a chilly, wet day, but I've heard a lot of feedback from both the businesses that were there and the students, and overall it was a great event. So thank you all for putting that on, and I look forward to attending the next one. I also attended the football game on Saturday. We came out with the W. And so it was cool. I was able to sit in front of the student section, so it was a little rowdy, but my kids loved it. So that was great to be able to be a part of that and see that. So congratulations to the football team and the coaches, the athletic director. It was a great event. And that's all, Madam Chair.
Good. All right. Closed session certification, please, Ms. Dawson.
Pursuant to 2.2-3711A of the Code of Virginia, the Orange County School Board will convene a closed meeting for the following: discussion of personnel or the performance of a division employee as authorized by Section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia for resignation, termination, transfer, employment, salary adjustment, and retirement of employees. Discussion of pupil personnel as authorized by Section 2.2-3711A2 for waiver of compulsory attendance.
May I have a second?
I second that.
All those in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye. We're in closed session. Ms. Dawson, I have closed session certification, please.
Whereas the Orange County School Board has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas 2.2-3712D of the Code of Virginia requires certification by this school board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Orange County School Board hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed, and 2, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered.
May I have a
Second.
Ms. Byram, have roll call, please.
Mrs. Anderson,
Aye.
Mrs. Dawson,
Aye.
Miss Harrington,
Aye.
Mrs. Quintern,
Aye.
Mr. Rickett.
Aye.
Madam Chair, the clerk certifies the vote as follows: 5 yes votes, no votes. The resolution is approved by a 5-0 vote.
Dr. Hornick, deposition of personnel actions.
Yes, ma'am. Recommend approval of the personnel actions as presented in closed session.
Move to approve the personnel agenda, including employment, salary adjustment, resignation, and transfers of staff.
And one more. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Deposition of pupil personnel actions. Dr.
Madam Chair, recommend approval of the pupil personnel actions as presented in closed session.
Have a motion?
Move to approve the request for waiver of compulsory attendance under the religious exemption for pupil personnel case number PP 2024-37.
Second.
All those in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye. Anything else?
Madam Chair, I failed to add discussion for the next agenda item regarding House Bill 1548.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. If there's nothing else, good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Seal decided to do the one night where we were going to be here forever.
You picked a good one.
It's all good. All the kids asleep by now.